Good morning, YouTube, BookTube. This is Johnny. Thought I'd make a video. It's a Tuesday morning here in West Michigan. It is April the 16th. My wife just left to have breakfast with old nursing girlfriends, and I have been sitting here writing in my diary. I am right now on page 338 for the year 2019. I started this morning on my second folder. First folder of every month, I go from day 1 to day 15. And today we're on April the 16th, so we're in the middle of the month. So I already wrote a page. So yeah, writing in my diary. And I was reading this morning for morning worship, Reformed Systematic Theology, Revelation in God by Joel R. Beeke and Paul M. Smalley. I'm really enjoying this, being blessed. Full of good, solid Dutch Reformed theology, if you're into that. I'm more into like Pauline theology, New Testament theology, but once in a while I'll read some Dutch Reformed theology or some Puritan theology or mystical theology or Old Testament theology. But I'll read some Dutch Reformed theology for a couple weeks and then I'll go into something else. I read this last night before going to bed, and I've been reading it also this morning. Gregory the Great, More Reflections on the Book of Job. This is volume 5. This is a new translation. This is books 23 through 27. This is translated by Brian Kerns. Yeah, Greg the Great was Pope from 590 to 604, a time of great turmoil in Italy and in the Western Roman Empire, generally because of the barbarian invasions. Gregory's experience as Pope of the city of Rome, and as, can't pronounce that word, Apocryphus of Pope Pelagius, fitted him admirably for the new challenge of the papacy. The more reflections on the book of Job were first given to the monks who accompanied Gregory to the embassy in Constantinople. This 5th volume, containing books 23 to 27, provides a commentary on 6 chapters of Job, from Job 32:1 through Job 37 verse 24. So I was reading that this morning, and yeah, I was sitting in the living room after my wife left, and my wife goes to a women's Bible study at her church, and she's going through 1st, 2nd Peter, and Jude, Steadfast in the Faith. This is a study guide by Sarah Ivill. So I was looking through it because many years ago, when we were at a small independent Dutch Reformed church, I taught Sunday school for 10 years, and I spent a couple years. We went through 1st, 2nd Peter, and Jude, and so I was looking at Jude and 2nd Peter and 1st Peter this morning, and I really was reading this chapter in 2nd Peter that really came to my mind this morning, and I thought I'd just read it since we're having morning worship. It says in 2nd Peter, he says there in chapter 2 of 2nd Peter, but there were also false prophets among the people, even as there will be false teachers among you, who will secretly bring in destructive heresies, even denying the Lord who bought them, and bring on themselves swift destruction. And many will follow their destructive ways, because of whom the way of truth will be blasphemed. By covetousness they will exploit you with deceptive words. For a long time their judgment has not been idle, and their destruction does not slumber. For if God did not spare the angels who sinned, but cast them down to hell, and delivered them into chains of darkness, to be reserved for judgment, and did not spare the ancient world, but saved Noah, one of 8 people, a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood of the world of the ungodly, and turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemned them to destruction, making them an example of those who would live ungodly, and delivered righteous Lot, who was oppressed by the filthy conduct of the wicked. For that righteous man dwelling among them tormented his righteous soul from day to day by seeing and hearing their lawless deeds. Then the Lord knows how to deliver the godly out of temptations, and to reserve the unjust under punishment for the day of judgment, and especially those who walk according to the flesh in the lust of uncleanness, and despise authority. They are presumptuous and self-willed. They are not afraid to speak evil of dignitaries, whereas angels who are greater in power do not bring a reviling accusation against them before the Lord. So I was downstairs the other morning, and I read that sermon by the old preacher William Huntington, and I came across another sermon in those little sermon booklets, and it was on fleeing out of Sodom. And I was reading it, and I really got blessed, and I thought I would just read a little bit of it this morning, just because it fits along with 2 Peter. Also, Jude mentions the destruction of Sodom. If I remember correctly, it says here, I think it says there, and yeah, it says in Jude, but I want to remind you, though you once knew this, that the Lord, having saved the people out of the land of Egypt, afterward destroyed those who did not believe. And the angel who did not keep their proper domain, but left their abode, he has reserved in everlasting chains under darkness for the judgment of the great day. As Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities around them, in similar manner to those having given themselves over to sexual immorality and gone after strange flesh, are set forth as an example, suffering the vengeance of eternal fire. Likewise, also these dreamers defile the flesh, reject authority, and speak evil of dignitaries. You can see the parallels between 2 Peter and Jude. So he says here, the world of mankind is divided into 2 companies, as I may say, into 2 cities. There is a city of Zion, the church of God, the holy and beloved city. And there is Sodom, that polluted and accursed city, which is appointed to destruction. You belong to the latter of these. How much soever you may look upon yourselves better than others, yet you are of the same city, the same company, with fornicators and drunkards and adulterers and common swearers and highwaymen and pirates. This sermon was preached in the 17th or 18th century. And sodomites, how much soever you may think yourselves distinguished, as long as you are out of Christ, you belong to the very same society. You are of the same company. You join with them and are no better than they, in any otherwise than as you have greater restraints. You are considered in the sight of God as fit to be ranked with him. You and they are altogether the objects of the loathing and horrors of God, and have the wrath of God abiding on you. And you will go with them and be destroyed with them, if you do not escape from your present state. Yea, you are of the same society and the same company with the devils. For Sodom is not only the city of wicked men, but is the hold of every foul spirit. You belong to that city that is appointed to an awful and inevitable and universal swift and sudden destruction, a city that has a storm of fire and wrath hanging over it. Many of you are convinced of the awful state that you are in while in Sodom, and are making some attempt to escape from the wrath that hangs over it. Let such be warned by what has been said, to escape for their lives and not to look back. Look not back unless you choose to have a share in the burning tempest that is coming down on that city. Look not back in remembrance of the enjoyments which you had in Sodom, as hankering after the pleasant things which you have had there, after the ease, the security, and the pleasure which you have enjoyed. Remember Lot's wife, for she looked back as being loath utterly and forever to leave the ease, the pleasure, and plenty which she enjoyed in Sodom, and having a mind to return to them again. Remember what became of her. Remember the children of Israel in the wilderness, who were desirous going back again into Egypt, because they remembered the leeks and the onions of Egypt. Numbers 11 verse 5, and says, remember the fish which we did eat in Egypt freely, the cucumbers and the onions and the garlic. Remember what was the issue of their hankering. You must be willing forever to leave all the ease and pleasure and profitable of sin, and forsake all for salvation, as Lot forsook all and left all he had to escape out of Sodom. And further, to enforce this warning, let me entreat you who are in this state to consider these things which I shall now mention. I won't read all of them, but I'll just read towards the end. He says, for if you look back and live long after it, there will be a great danger that you will never get any further. The only way to seek salvation is to press forward, and with all your might, and still to look and press forward, never to stand still or slacken your pace. When Lot's wife stopped in her flight and stood still in order that she might look, her punishment was that she was to stand forever. She never got any further. She never got beyond that place, but there she stood as a pillar of salt, a durable pillar and monument of wrath for her folly and her wickedness. So it very often is with backsliders, though they may live a considerable time after. When they look back, after they have been taking pains in their salvation, they lose all, and they put themselves under vast disadvantages by quenching the Spirit of God and losing their convictions. They dreadfully harden their own hearts and stupefy their souls and make way for discouragements and dreadfully strengthen and establish the interests of sin in their hearts. Many ways give Satan great advantage to ruin them and provoke God oftentimes utterly to lead them to hardness of heart. When they come to look back, their souls presently become dead and hard like Lot's wife's body. If this be the case, though they live long after, they never get any further. It is worse for them than if they were immediately damned. When persons in fleeing out of Sodom look back, the last case is far worse than the first. And experience confirms that none ordinary are so hard to be brought to repentance as backsliders. 5, it may stir you up to flee for your lives and not to look behind you, when you consider how many have fled to the mountains, while you yet remain in Sodom. To what multitudes has God given the wisdom to flee to Christ, the mountain of safety? They have fled to the little city of Zoar, which God will spare and never destroy. They are in a safe condition. They are out of reach of the storm, the fire, and the brimstone can do them no hurt there. But if you remain in that cursed city among the cursed company, you are yet in Sodom, which God is about to terribly destroy, where you are in danger every minute of having snares, fire, and brimstone come down on your head. Though so many have obtained deliverance, yet you have not. Good has come, but you have seen none of it. Others are happy, but no one knows what will become of you. You have no part nor lot in that glorious salvation of souls. The consideration of this should stir you up, effectually to escape, and in your escape to press forward, still to press forward and to resolve to press forward and forever. What will be in the way to hearken to no temptation and never look back, or in any way slacken or abate your endeavors as long as you live, but if possible to increase them more and more. And then he says, to enforce this warning against looking back, let me beseech you to consider the exceeding promises which there is in the heart of it. The heart of man is a backsliding heart. There is in the heart a great love and hankering desire after the ease and pleasure and enjoyment of Sodom, as there was in Lot's wife, by which persons are continually liable to temptations to look back. The heart is so much towards Sodom that it is a difficult thing to keep the eye from turning that way, and the feet from tending thither. When men under conviction are put upon fleeing, is by mere force, is because God lay hold on their hands, as he did on Lot's and his wife's, and dragged them so far. But the tendency of the heart is to go back to Sodom again. Persons are very prone to backsliding and go through discouragement. They are apt to be discouraged. The heart is unsteadily and soon tired and soon gives out. Is apt to listen to discouraging temptations, and discouragement leads to backsliding. It weakens persons' hands. Lies is a dead weight on their hearts and makes them drag heavily, as if it continue long. It very often issues in security and senselessness. Convictions are often shaken off that way, and they begin first to go off with discouragement. Backsliding is a disease that is exceedingly secret in its way of working. It is a flattering distemper. It works like consumption, wherein persons often flatter themselves that they are not worse, but something better, in a hopeful way to recover until a few days before they die. So backsliding commonly comes on gradually and steals on men insensibly, and they still flatter themselves that they are not backslidden. They plead that they are seeking yet, and they hope they have not lost their convictions. And by the time they find it out and cannot pretend so any longer, they are commonly so far gone that they care not much if they have lost their convictions. And when it comes to that, it commonly is a gone case with persons as to those convictions. Thus they blind themselves and keep themselves insensible of their own disease, and so are not terrified with it, nor awakened to use means for relief until it is past cure. Thus it is that backsliding commonly comes upon persons that have for some time been under considerable convictions and afterwards lose them. Let the consideration of this your danger excite you to greatest care and diligence, to keep your hearts, and to watchfulness and constant prayer against backsliding, and to let it put you upon endeavors to strengthen your resolutions of guarding against everything that tends to the contrary, that you may indeed hold out to the end. For then you shall know, if you follow on to know the Lord. Amen. So yeah, that's always a danger, backsliding. You get convicted of sin. You feel this, the work of the Holy Spirit stirring you on to greater heights of holiness, but you quench the Spirit. You look back to Sodom, and before you know it, you've quenched the Spirit and you've become backslidden. So it's always a danger that we have to really every day examine our hearts. What are our desires? What are we seeking after? Are we seeking to please the Lord or please men? Are we seeking to live a holy life, to forsake the world and seek after the things to come, seek after the glory of Christ, seek to behold the beauty of Christ every day? So we got fleeing out of Sodom. So I thought I'd just read that this morning. Yesterday, I volunteered at the Book Nook, and I brought home this book by Terry Eagleton, Culture and the Death of God. And I was reading yesterday at the Book Nook this new novel by D.C. Boyle, historical fiction on Timothy Leary and the psychedelic movement in the early 60s, Outside Looking In by D.C. Boyle. So yeah, today, I don't know, I have to go get coffee beans this morning, and I might visit local thrift stores. And the day will go by. Right now, this morning, it's kind of gray. It's supposed to be rainy today, but it still hasn't gotten warm. So I hope you're having a good week. Yeah, I'm supposed to get a book in the mail today. And so yeah, I'm going to do that humanities tag that's been going around in YouTube. So I'll probably do that maybe tomorrow. So yeah, fleeing out of Sodom. This sermon was by Jonathan Edwards. He was a great American theologian, philosopher. He was born in 1703. And yeah. So I'll sign off. Hope you're having a good day. And until next time, bye.